Okay, welcome everyone. And tonight it's not McDuff lives, it's Johnny Cash lives. Actually, we're having a little technical problem with Dr. Hamamoto's feed. So while we're waiting, we're going to bring you live from death back to life, Johnny Cash. Take it away, Johnny.
Thank you very much. I hear that train a coming, he's coming around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, the time keeps dragging on. And that people keep a moving on down to San Antonio. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. And I hear that train rolling, I hang my head and cry. Well, I bet there's rich folks eating in some fancy dining car, probably drinking coffee and smoking them big cigars. But I know I had it coming, I know I can't be free. But that people keep a rolling, and that's what tortures me. Well, if they freed me from this prison, if this railroad train was mine, but I'd move on over just a little down the line, far from Folsom Prison. That's where I want to stay. And I'd let that lonesome whistle blow my blues away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johnny Cash. We may have a little bit, Johnny, you may not leave just yet. We may ask you to do a couple more because we don't have Dr. Hamamoto yet on the line. And I hate to, take our customers or our viewers' valuable time. But I didn't decide tap dancing was the best thing. I thought John actually playing guitar was the best. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, we need to get you your microphone there and your headphones. We'll get you all set up.
Who was that guy in the black hat?
I don't know. I know that we're going to be talking to somebody near Folsom Prison tonight, but I hope Dr. Hamamoto isn't in.
Well, at least
Folsom
we're
Prison.
still outside.
Yeah, we're outside. We're on the outside looking in, which is the place to be. So,
all right. Well, welcome everybody to McDuff Lives, the trio edition. And tonight we are hoping to hook up with Professor Hamamoto just as soon as we can conquer a little technical glitch. And meantime, I speak about tap dancing. George Webb is an expert at tap dancing in interlocutory fashion.
Yeah, the man who loved tap dancing, verbal tap dancing. Well, I love working with a triple threat like you, sing, dance, tell jokes, the whole thing. And we got Shecky Hamamoto coming in a minute. He's usually got a couple of pretty funny jokes. I think I just heard him come in. Dr. Hamamoto, are you there?
Oh, boy. I think I see him.
Oh, hey, there you are. Dr. Hamamoto, how are you tonight?
Sorry about that. I'm very good. Thank you very much. That was great, John. I appreciate that. I'm not far away from Folsom Prison myself.
Now, Shecky, you usually have an opening joke for us before we get too serious here. You want to start us?
Yeah, two very learned men turned into a bar. They went into a bar, and the waiter said, "What can I get for you, Dr. Fauci?" And he says, "By the way, how's the hospital?" He says, "Oh, it's great, except for all the sick people there." And then he turned to Dr. Kissinger and said, "Dr. Kissinger, how about you?" He said, "Great. Everything's going great, except for all those people."
Just people. Yeah, well, there's the difference between Fauci and Kissinger, and that's a great way to start us off with heights. John, why don't you take it away? You've had a big week reading and doing interviewing Harley Schlanger, and just a big week for you.
I'd say the biggest thing on the show, on my show, has been working with people on the issue of China.
Yeah.
And the amount of skepticism, I think, is very justified, actually, that most people are highly skeptical about the idea of China being a reliable negotiating partner, a diplomatic partner that we could, as has been said, I can see eye to eye with them. I can trust this man, Well, maybe the idea is not so much that we have to trust the individuals, but that we have to establish a respect for the fact that they are a big sovereign country, and that if we don't solve things diplomatically, then the alternative is just too horrible to consider. So that's been my thrust, is to try to use the expertise of the folks at Schiller Institute and LaRouche organization to broaden my own understanding and to share that with others, and then to get back to them and say, well, here's some of the pushback I'm getting, and they're happy to get it. There's like, yeah, we're glad to hear that, so we can work with that, because they really are experts. They go to China, they talk to the big people, they have almost a diplomatic mission in the UN. So it's not like they're just a couple of guys with a computer. They're the real deal, and they've been doing it for decades. So I'm grateful to them, and Marcia Maluk in particular, for setting up these interviews that I have Friday night. So tomorrow night, Richard Freeman will be joining me for the first time, and we'll be talking about economics and the Great Reset and the horrific economic impact that it will have if it's allowed to go forward.
Wow, that's great. Well, that's a great lead-in, Doctor. I saw the interviews. Man, I learned a lot. I learned so much with these folks that write the EIRs, but I'll throw it over to you, Doctor. The subject is China, and you can take it any direction you want.
Well, George, I know today it was a great show today, by the way. I mean, it always is, but you were truly in the zone. This talk, all this saber rattling, to put it lightly, that's coming from probably NATO via the Pentagon is quite alarming. And today, your show, the recurrent theme was that of nuclear winter. And I think you were alluding to the fact that it's been projected that if there is some sort of exchange of nuclear weaponry, that we could be plunged into the great environmental holocaust that the green people don't talk about, right? And that's true. I think it's dangerous. One of the reasons why I brought my friend Lena Poo on very early on is because I knew where this was going. I wanted someone to see a Chinese American face, a Taiwanese American face, and I wanted someone to hear. I want the audience to hear what Mandarin sounds like, Chinese language, right? To show that, hey, this is these are people. These are not cutout characters that you see in the movies or the TVs or a lot of indie media, right? So far as I agree with the LaRouche group so far as economic development is concerned. Now, in my reading of Cold War history, I don't really come across very many examples of militaristic occupations by the Chinese. It's usually done through economic domination and payoffs, which I guess is par for the course. On the other hand, I see and I'm an American citizen, and I support my country and its role within the world system. But I see the hand of the United States, Britain, other colonial powers, even fading colonial powers like Portugal here, who are always in the picture where it comes to assassination. I think one of the people that we need to talk about, because the question always arises, why revisit the Kennedy assassination? Well, preceding Kennedy, there was a UN Secretary General, Doug Hammarskjöld, who was killed in an airline accident in the Congo in 1961. Swedish nationality, More recently, I gave a talk on Stieg Larsson, also a Swede, who wrote a book that he never saw published because he was killed before it was shown, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. He was against the post-war fascist international, which is very strong in Sweden. So there's a connecting line between Doug Hammarskjöld and the death of a popular novelist, Stieg Larsson. If people want to know what the connection, George, of your path-breaking work is to the present, all they have to do is look into the popular culture. It's all over the place.
Yeah, well, that's I remember Kennedy made I think Kennedy made the peace race speech at the UN, and Dag Hammarskjöld is, sitting behind him, presiding over that. And I just think that the Alan Dulleses of the world and the Bissels of the world were like, I'm so glad we're setting up and bringing that Oswald guy in here and using him as a patsy, but this guy's not going to last for long talking about the peace race. I want him talking about the missile gap. And not too long after that, that Dag Hammarskjöld invited Kennedy to make that peace race speech. He went down in the plane. And again, you're spot on. The same people that are plotting for this, that was not the Belgian Congo at that time. I don't believe it had gone independent in 1954, I think. But anyway, the OAS, which was our good friend Clay Shaw's intelligence spinoff of OSS, certainly had their hands on that. They wanted not Ethiopia, but which I believe also was under French control for a while, Italian control, but they wanted Algiers. And Dag Hammarskjöld was one of these guys saying, hey, people should have self-determination. Well, we'll self-determine your plane right into the side of Mount Kenya or Mount Congo. I can't remember which mountain he flew into. But here we go. Now I see John going to the Deep State Library here.
It's the Thomas F. O'Loughlin Jr. Memorial Library. And as you were talking about Dag Hammarskjöld, I was trying to reach for the book JFK versus Allen Dulles. That was a brand new book that I had read a few chapters of, but the chapter I did not read, an entire chapter on Dag Hammarskjöld, and how indeed that's exactly right. Your memory is exactly right again, that Hammarskjöld was in favor of peace. Hammarskjöld was with Kennedy, and the two of them together could have done amazing things. And that is the tragic story of the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, and his assassination. While Kennedy was just barely sworn in, Kennedy thought that he was going to be Lumumba's friend, that he was going to be helping him to develop, as you say, to develop an economy, to develop the infrastructure, to lend a hand to the former colonial powers. But now, the old colonial powers were not going to let go. And that is Dulles's game against JFK. And they won that round. Yeah. But the game's not over.
Yeah.
The Doug Hammarskjöld and the Kennedy assassinations, they're twin pillars of the McDuff story, I believe. They're connected at the hip. You're right, exactly right, George. And more recent times, Stieg Larsson was a big promoter of anti-NATO, and so was Olof Palme. He wanted to pursue the third way. Again, the prime minister of Sweden. He was assassinated, just as Stieg Larsson was assassinated a number of years later. So Sweden is very much part. I remember, I think it was yesterday, George, I gave you those documents about this program that encompasses, it's been secret for 50 years, that encompasses 5 North Atlantic nations, including Sweden, Scandinavian countries. And until recently, they were unknown. We just talked about them monolithically. It's just part of NATO. By the way, I don't think Sweden is a member of NATO to this day.
No, I think they're a cooperating partner. They'll let people go through their country and so forth. They don't have a standing army. Yeah, I mean, flyovers are okay, as long as you're paying, for it. But interestingly enough, Carl Bildt, who is this deep state operative that would make, Alan Dulles blush, is that, neo-Nazi now, doing all these flips in Africa and all over the world. But Andy, you might want to cue up Peace Race, just since we have Dag Hammarskjöld and Kennedy, just Kennedy's Peace Race speech, because sometimes I think, we have a little music to remind us of a great person in history, maybe a little speech every once in a while to remind us of a great person.
I love it. And certainly you can't do better than John F. Kennedy and his incredible eloquence.
Yeah, just so people remember, because this reminded me so much of the things that Eisenhower was talking about in the March summit with Khrushchev in 60, or May summit, that, hey, we're going to have peace. That's the American University speech. Maybe I got that wrong.
Talking about the moon speech?
No, it should be Kennedy speaks in front of the UN. I think he only spoke one time in front of the UN in 1961, and it was to propose limited. There it is. To propose a nuclear test ban treaty. And what ended up happening was they ended up compromising and making it a partial test ban treaty. I think you couldn't explode things in outer space, and you couldn't explode them underground, but you could still explode them underwater or something like that. I think maybe I got underwater and underground mixed up, but go ahead, Andy.
But I mean, just
President.
Oh, go ahead.
Who has taken some interest in the election of presidents. I want to congratulate you on your election to this high office. Mr. Secretary General, delegates to the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, we meet again in the quest for peace. 24 months ago, when I last had the honor of addressing this body, the shadow of fear lay darkly across the world. The freedom of West Berlin was in immediate peril. Agreement on a neutral Laos seemed remote. The mandate of the United Nations in the Congo was under fire. The financial outlook for this organization was in doubt. Dag Hammarskjöld was dead. The doctrine of Troika was being pressed. In his place, an atmospheric nuclear test had been resumed by the Soviet Union. Those were anxious days for mankind, and some men wondered aloud whether this organization could survive. But the 16th and 17th General Assemblies achieved not only survival, but progress. Rising to its responsibility, the United Nations helped reduce the tensions and helped to hold back the darkness. Today, the clouds have lifted a little so that new rays of hope can break through. The pressures on West Berlin appear to be temporarily eased. Political unity in the Congo has been largely restored. A neutral coalition in Laos, while still in difficulty, is at least in being. The integrity of the United Nations Secretariat has been reaffirmed. A United Nations decade of development is underway. And for the first time in 17 years of effort, a specific step has been taken to limit the nuclear arms race. I refer, of course, to the treaty to ban nuclear tests in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater, concluded by the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and already signed by nearly 100 countries. It has been hailed by people the world over who are thankful to be free from the fears of nuclear fallout. And I am confident that on next Tuesday at 10:30 o'clock in the morning, it will receive the overwhelming endorsement of the Senate of the United States.
Okay.
The world has not escaped from the darkness. The long shadow.
Well, there you go. Some very inspirational words, and I think it kind of confirmed everything we were saying. Doctor, what's your reaction?
John F. Kennedy, he's our martyred president, and the history of 2021 would be quite different had he been alive to implement his policy. Unfortunately, as we find now, we had zero inkling of this back in 1963, especially from the perspective of a fifth grader that there were these entrenched, decades, if not centuries old, long bloodlines, families that had other ideas for what America was to become. It was simply to become a vassal state in the 21st century. And for those who depart from the received wisdom of its pundits, whether they be CNN or people in academia or in the State Department, then you're going to be shut down. You're going to be eradicated, because the operating of the business plan that our martyred president, John F. Kennedy, was articulating there, and I think he was signing his death warrant even as he was uttering these words. He will be avenged, just as Mr. O'Loughlin will be avenged for his sacrifice. That's a cosmic law of the universe.
Mm-hmm. John, your reaction?
Well, I want to get back to the idea of a peace race. I think that was the thought of Dag Hammarskjöld, and I think that something that I've thought about often is, if you really wanted to be the most wealthy, happiest, most successful, and wonderful country in the world, then what you need to do is to start the peace race. You need to show that you don't need no stinking army. You don't need no stinking satellites with laser weapons. You don't need any of that stuff. What you need is to be the greatest happiness source in the world, so that everybody says, wow, look at that country. I want to be that country. I want to be part of that country. I want to get to that country. You know, the old that was the fraud that they did to people. You know, the Golden Mountain for the Chinese, or the immigrants. You know, the melting pot that never melted. You know, that never happened. But those myths were not. It didn't mean that there wasn't some truth behind it. That if we could really create a haven for people, and to utilize our knowledge of how to work an economy in favor of getting rid of poverty, of getting everyone a decent education, of allowing people to be creative again. I think a lot of our problem is that every idea, every new thought is already patented. It's already, as soon as somebody thinks of it, boom, they race to the patent office. They run to file a copyright, and no great new ideas are going to come along as long as it's all shut down and organized in such a way as to prevent a peaceful, but I think the vanguard of peace would be the most successful country, the country that says, we are not going to try to fix other countries anymore. We're just going to be the happiest, best, most successful. We're going to support families and children and old people and everybody. It's going to be the best country you've ever seen. And that, I think, would be the way to win the peace race. Because why would anybody want to destroy the most happiest, peaceful country in the world? And we just wouldn't let them do it. The people would be too happy. They'd say, no, you go away. We don't want your terrorism. We don't want your bullying. We don't want your, shaming and your, sorry, I just heard a motorcycle go by. But you know what I'm saying? If we're the leaders in peace, then we can be, the proverbial city on the hill.
Yeah, city.
John, I couldn't agree more. Now, I just wanted to let the younger people who are watching that what John just articulated, what he just described, is not a utopian dream. He and I are about the same age. We were living that, exactly what he was talking about. We were living that. My parents were living that. It was communicated to us by our teachers, our community, everybody, the elected officials. We shared that same vision, and we were on that route. We were on the route to liberty and equality. All the elements were in play. Now, the good news is that we do not have to start from scratch. John, all we have to do is pick up where we left off on November 23rd, 1963. The infrastructure is there, but more importantly, the spirit is there. The memory, the cultural, the historical memory is still there. That's one of the reasons why they want to push the boomers off the historical stage, because we lived what you had just described. And we're going to be around long enough to make sure that we restart the system.
So, Doctor, you were your PhD is in culture and communication, I would say, and using remixing culture to create bonds between countries, let's say China and the United States, to give rebirth or renaissance to a lot of these ideas through the youth. Um, your thoughts about like this creative remix to have the young kids now rediscover the boomers' values, but do it with their own style and own spin.
Oh man, this is where Andy Dybala comes in. We're going to put all these values, all this whole package of Americana, put it in their media system. We're going to gamify it. And just like in other even tribal societies, they play games and they teach the young people how to hunt, how to cook, how to survive. They transmit it through play. So hey, we're going to go where that generation lives, which is online in the games, and just do a whole series. Just like sort of John, instead of John Madden's NFL, we'll call it George Webb's Victory Road Trip.
I like that.
Something snappy, something highly marketable, and I really think that's realistic. It's practical. A spinoff of that, or something along the same. I'm also entrepreneurial in addition to having all those other bona fides. Is esports, especially since there's all these lockdowns going on. Esports is electronic sports is a whole area that can involve the entire globe, even those countries that do not have a giant, colossal, overblown professional sports complex like the United States of America, right? Places like Vietnam, you name it, Laos, all the different countries that were once part of this drug dealing international trade can be brought along, because the question is, well, how are we going to subsist if our opium business is gone? Well, you can be a leader in esports. And by the way, when I went to Vietnam to speak at the University of Da Nang, that was one of my proposals: become a regional, if not global, leader in esports and new media. And you don't need the Super Bowl or the incredible sports complex, which are about to plunge, by the way, in the U.S. Maybe they're going to be used for housing displaced Americans. But there's all these different creative. See, there's an example. That's our generation. That's our future right there. So instead of just kind of looking down on them or laughing at them, mocking them like they do on InfoWars or wherever else, I want to see what's there as that can be grown into something really useful for all of us and positive.
Yeah. Where in the World was in Carmen Sandiego, I think, was a great game.
I remember that.
You remember that?
Oh my God, I love that.
To teach you geography.
Yes.
And then if you could throw Clue in with that, I always thought if you could throw Clue in and you could just do all the deep state stuff, it's Hillary with, the coronavirus, level 3, and Epstein with the Evergreen plane with the spraying. Oh, that's how you got Libya. Okay, you got that right. You get the points for Libya. And then you can almost remaster these old games. I do like this creative remixing that you've kind of taught all over the world, as a way of kind of leveraging off of stuff that's already pre-sold, but then mixing it in a new way to get to a new audience. Because you're always about new audiences saying, hey, we got to beat this, flashing light thing and buzzers and bells.
I have an idea. One of the most disappointing shows on television right now is called Jeopardy. And the reason that it's so disappointing is that because it's all turned into just mush questions. There's no real challenge as far as history. They might go for some, things like, who was the next king after Queen Anne or something like that. But there's not any really in-depth stuff. And I think that the history that we're bringing out on through our work can be put into a Jeopardy game. And things like, well, for instance, from the book I'm reading now, who was Alexander Spotswood? Very few people would probably know that right now, but Alexander Spotswood was the governor of Virginia for something like 20 or 25 years in the middle of the 1700s. And he was responsible for opening up the western part of Virginia, sending some German and Swiss miners out there to look for iron mines so that they could make things, especially, weapons and things like that. And
Charlottesville, maybe
Charlottesville. And good, that goes right out to your Seventh Society, doesn't it? But
yeah,
but that kind of thing is, who is Alexander Spotswood? If you have to look it up, then you'll learn something. If you already know it, then you'll win the game.
Mhm.
Well, let me jump in there because I did go to Charlottesville a couple of times, and I did go to the School of Mines there, and I did go to the reactor that they had in the basement, the educational reactor, the Muller reactor. I did go to where the guy who came up with the centrifuge that they brought in from Russia, they were hiding this centrifuge with the University of Maryland. And I'm Spindle Graves. Is that his name? No, that's a guy I played basketball against. But what a great name if you've invented a centrifuge, Spindle. I can't remember his name, but I went into his laboratory, and there was this old fable that the Monticello was out there with Jefferson and hiding in the hills, and it was sort of like the Nazi papers, but this was rewind about 150 years. This was all the kind of the secret allergy, the metal mixing and alchemy. Thank you. But this was more real metallurgy. Yeah. And so it was all supposedly stored out there, and the Confederates had this code system, and then the gold was supposedly moved up the I believe it's the James River that goes that far to just to the base of, it's about 10 miles jaunt from the James to up there.
About right.
Yeah, it's about as far back as you can get on a river. So it is a great, Andy's talked to me about this game platform called Steam, but I do like this kind of where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, and you need to pick up some local facts to figure out a puzzle and then to move on.
Steam has 25 million subscribers, so you don't need a large percentage of that population to really make a difference. And John, do you remember the board game Trivial Pursuit?
I remember it only as a something I didn't like to do.
Okay, but that could use a reboot right about now, I would think.
Same idea. I didn't like the questions. It's a similar type of thing. They'd want me to try to figure out, who was the person on some television show, and I don't play that.
Okay.
It used to be when Alec Trebek had the Jeopardy show, there was a way that you could kind of reason, and intuit the answer, kind of infer the answer if you didn't know chapter and verse. They didn't ask questions that were so, Macbeth says this to Lady Macbeth.
Well, the big game changer was when Big Blue won on Jeopardy. Remember when that happened?
Yeah,
that took the air out of the game. How do you beat the computer? So they went for trivia, I guess, after that.
It is destroyed Jeopardy for a lot of people, and there is a whole bunch of conspiracy theory around whether Big Blue actually won or not, because what they did is, if you feed in every possible question and then you use those as selectors to look at every possible answer, and then just do a process of elimination really fast, is it really thinking, or is it just search and retrieval? And I had actually, when I was at IBM, I had a chance to talk to that team and go to work for that division that sold those computers that was a part of Big Blue. And Lou Palmisano was the CEO, and he was just going out. And I do think that kind of the music died with IBM at that point, where they also tried to play the Watson was the one you're talking about, but Big Blue also with Gary Kasparov beating him in chess.
Yeah,
it was kind of like taking the fun out of these ways we used to interact. It was kind of like, oh, the computer's going to do that better, so you need to stop interacting with people playing chess or whatever you need, or Jeopardy, and now you need to go over here to this video game.
Right. And we used to call them parlor games because that was part of the household where all the family and friends gathered and played these little board games or card games or chess, you know.
Remember all those games that came in like they were like bookshelf games, and they had a cardboard box around them, and you pulled it, slide it out, and open it up, and there's the board, and you had all the pieces in it. One of them was about, you know, getting all the hotels, and I don't know. They were fun. Hey, I had I had a one of those Jeopardy questions that I wanted to try on you, George.
Oh, here we go.
Can you name
double Jeopardy or single?
No,
Let's just do Jeopardy questions from now on, Andy. John's opened the door. We're playing Jeopardy.
No, can you name someone who conquered 2 cities named Alexandria?
Well, I would start with Alexander and Alexander the Great, because I think it was named after him. But it might not have been called Alexandria before he conquered it, so that may be a problem there, right? Alexandria, Virginia, may have been someone in the British Navy, I'm thinking.
You're getting close.
Yeah. So I'll defer to you on that.
That's right. Admiral Alexander Cochrane, who led the raiding party on the Potomac that you and I have talked about from Fort Washington. Alexander Cochrane not only conquered Alexandria, Egypt, but also conquered Alexandria, Virginia.
So I got 2 of the wedges there.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. I knew Alexander the Great couldn't have conquered Alexandria because he named it Alexandria.
We'll give you 1 point for that one.
Yeah. I don't get the full compliment.
But that's a fun little one, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a great one. I like that one.
Yeah.
I do remember, these historical threads. I wouldn't be spending time doing it if I didn't really think it was kind of provided a. It's like when you do puzzles, you get better at puzzles. You play chess, you get better at chess.
Not me.
Not you. Well, that's whose books you're reading.
It's a tragedy. I know.
Yeah. But, if the books are the same way, if you read the same old tired, like you said, Dr. Hamamoto, of these kind of stereotypes of people in the Far East, you think of everybody as a coolie and everybody's Pearl S. Buck and the Good Earth or whatever. And what you have done a great job of with Servitors of Empire was to pick out these Asian Americans that, had the courage to stand up, kind of like McDuff with Irish Chang and others. And then just how that all works and how these people are all really real. I keep going back to the overthrow of China with 100 operatives backed by the British Crown and the opium money. But can you talk a little bit about, I'm really interested in the Irish Chang and what your future is with her.
I like this name, Irish Chang.
Iris. Iris. Yeah.
Iris, as in the visual. I plan to do some more follow-up on that. I think I might have told this story already, but when I went to go visit our friend Yoichi Shimatsu in Nanjing, there is a museum there dedicated to they didn't call the rape of Nanjing, but the Nanjing massacre by the Japanese imperial troops. And we went there with the express purpose of seeing the exhibit that was dedicated to Irish Chang, who had publicized this to the whole world about these atrocities that had not really been, they had been addressed in the academic world, but not by the larger public. And we were both shocked that exhibit had been taken out.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. So it had served, she had served a propaganda purpose up to a certain point. But then when China had to make nice again with the US and Japan, then the exhibit went. So that taught me a lot about how these movements can be manipulated, can be used in a quite cynical and cold fashion. So I hope by continuing the story, the after story of the Irish Chang, that her contribution will be remembered.
Yeah, we're watching Andy come up with all these different Google searches, trying to find Irish Chang. and he's got it now. I gave him the thing, the Rape of the Nanking that he wrote, but he was bringing up all these. Sometimes we've got some work to do, Doctor, with this younger generation. Let's just leave it there.
I couldn't keep my straight face. I'm sorry, folks.
Yeah, but this woman, if you want to just read her story there, and I can't read it from here, Andy, but if you want to just, you don't have a mic. This woman wrote this great book, Rape of Nanking, and it was, my dad used to tell me about this. He was, over there in Guadalcanal and Bougainville, like with your dad, and there was a lot of people that were very familiar with the Japanese Imperial Army and into China and so forth. And so I had heard this whole story, and I had to get these Time Life books out to look into it. This is just kind of forgotten history. But this woman wrote a great book, and she was just a superstar, rising superstar in the West Coast, I remember. And then all of a sudden she starts getting into the dark weapons, and then she suicides.
Yep, not very far from her home. And prior to her suicide, she had undergone psychiatric treatment with powerful SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, at Stanford Psychiatric. And I contributed an essay about Iris Chang, given my take on her, and the editors didn't like it. They thought it was too conspiratorial and wild. So they said, we will run the article if Iris Chang's mother reads my essay and comments on it. So Iris Chang's mother, who, by the way, wrote a really, really good book, a biography of her own daughter. I forgot her name. She taught at the University of Illinois. I think she was an instructor. Her husband, Iris Chang's father, was a professor of mathematics. But anyway, Iris Chang's mother read my essay, which later was adapted for this book, Servitors of Empire. And she agreed with it completely. She feels that her daughter was pharmacided with powerful hallucinogenic drugs. If she hadn't have been put into that regime, she might be alive today. But she was visited. She started to have a breakdown. She was doing a research project on the Bataan Death March, and that's when she really found out that while she thought she was going to go in on the Japanese, she found it was the U.S. was really behind most of the skullduggery. But she was, and the person has never been identified, but she was visited at a psychiatric hospital in Louisville. I don't know if it was the University of Louisville. I have to check back, but she was away from home doing a research, and she was visited by an unknown military officer. And she started having the hallucinations. Sounds like very, very similar, doesn't it? Does it sound like James Forrestal?
Well, the first one I thought of, when I thought of Harry Harris, Mr. PCR, Mr. Dark Weapons, Mr. Seventh Fleet, let's use naval ship guns to spread bioweapons. You just wonder who are the people that get assigned these tasks, and how do they carry them out? There she is.
I, from my own anecdotal studies and from my own direct observation, what I saw is mostly their children, typically boys, sons of military. A lot of Navy coming out of Alameda.
Yeah, scroll the other way, Andy, and her mother's up in the corner. And what is her mother's name there?
Ying Young. Yeah, Chang. Yeah.
Could you click on that, Andy? It'll go to her books, I think. Oh, I see. This is her only book, which is about her.
Yes, that is the one. I recognize the cover.
The Woman Who Could Not Forget by Ying Chang.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an excellent book.
Yeah. And now, is that her as a young woman, or is that because it looks a lot like Iris Chang?
Oh yeah, it's about her daughter. The book is that her mother wrote is about her daughter Iris Chang. So that's her picture, Iris Chang's picture. I think that's her official Rape of Nanjing photo. I think that was on that book.
From her original book, yeah.
From the Rape of Nanjing. And also, if for those of you who might have missed the couple of episodes ago, it was brought up that Iris Chang wrote about Professor Chen over at Caltech, California Institute of Technology, who was a professor there. It was called The Threat of the Silkworm. And he later on went back to China. He was persecuted during the McCarthy era. See, one of the downsides of all this anti-Chinese sentiment right now is that you're not making any friends here. You know what happened to Professor Chen? He was hounded out of academia and the U.S. because he was seen as an unreliable alien. So he said, well, I'm going to go to China. And what did he do? He was the founder of the Chinese nuclear weapons program, in addition to creating silkworm missiles, which still are haunting us in the battlefield, I think. China sold a lot of silkworm missiles to Iran, for example.
Yeah.
So all the
Sure.
China talk or whatever it is, it could be anti-Mexican or anti-Eritrean. It doesn't really matter. You're not making friends by engaging in all this Chicom rhetoric or whatever it might be. And I'm all for freedom of speech, but I agree with John. I agree with the LaRouche organization. Let's make business, not war.
They're really interested in business. The matter of fact, as I have studied it my little bit, it appears to me that the idea that they are a socialist or communist top-down controlled society is gone. This is a capitalist country. These people are engaging in cutthroat capitalism. Corruption is part of the game. It's all just like the Wild West, or just like, Manhattan in the 1820s. Before there was any rules, and the Wall Street was just completely whatever you can do, whatever you can get away with. You drive your competitors out of business, whatever it takes, you're going to win. They have adopted that, and the only limit to it is how much money do you have. So the rich get richer, the poor get much poorer, I would think. But on the other hand, they have sufficient of a social net, and they have. What they've really done is created an economy that is powerful, that grows, that has productive. It produces things, it sells things, it makes the lives of the people that live there get better as their economy grows. Whereas our economy doesn't help us at one bit. Our economy is only there to produce weapons and arms and soldiers for their war games. So as we go down, they go up. And this is where I'm thinking that, yes, they are a threat. They are a threat because they have done smart things with their economy to invest in their people, in their culture. And I do take seriously their commitment to things like music, like the education of students in a broad-minded way, to get a liberal education, which doesn't even exist in this country anymore. That's one of the great blessings that I have had in my life, was my parents knew that what I needed was a liberal education, so I could, do what I do, bring all kinds of disparate things into my mind at the same time, and come up with something that might even be novel, something that might help the world. If we don't have liberal educations, if all we do is specialize in, how to splice and dice genes or something like that, then you're nothing better than a servitor. You're never going to be a leader, and I don't think you're going to be fulfilling your promise as a human being either. And that's what I just is so sad that our education system is not providing an education in how to think.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that if I could. What I try to do in the books is to focus on and feature people who, or just in every walk of life, just who see patterns, who pick up historical threads and carry them through, like Irish Chang. It's just a fascinating person. You mentioned Francis Drake, for all his piracy, is an interesting guy because he's just everywhere. Admiral Cochrane is an interesting guy because he's everywhere. And he realizes, hey, we're not going to win this thing unless we go get some metal here, so let's send an expedition into inland. Those kind of things are just really super interesting history. And I try to bring those things out in what I do, and Doctor, I think you do the same thing with your books.
Now, George, in your most recent book, which is wonderful, I know every time a new book comes out, I say, well, this is the best one yet, but it's true. But you tell the story, and I wish it could have gone, it deserves a whole book in itself. Maybe he'll write it one day. But you tell the story of Gary Winkleman. He's just an everyday guy. He's doing business. And all of a sudden, he finds himself there, witness to a world historical event. So you don't have to be an Admiral Cochrane. You just have to be an everyday person who is sentient and can see with your own two eyes and assess what's going on. It could happen to anybody, and when it does, you want to be ready. You could be at the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, on January 6, 2021, at a world historical event.
Yeah.
And you may not have any specialized training or rank in the military or any standing in your corporation, but you could be witness to something unfolding that only you or you and other people will be able to make sense of. So be prepared, be alert, be schooled, and have your truth glasses on when the time comes, because it will come, and it happens to everybody.
Yeah, Gary Waitman was witness to history right there on running a series of hotels. And here comes Mark Rich, and here comes Yeltsin standing on the tank, and he's practicing his speech at his hotel across the street. Then they take him across the street. And he's already had a half a bottle of vodka, and they can't get him to spit out the words, And then he goes, "We're taking the White Palace. That's your word. That's when we fire the shot into the White Palace." It was just a fantastic, these charrettes, bring forward. We had another gal there who had been in the demilitarized zone when a North Korean pilot had defected. And that was hushed up by the State Department. These charrettes are great for those things. And also for unearthing history, like we did with the McDuff stuff. We found that McDuff was a lot more involved in Europe than we had thought. The guy who's the top guy, commander in Europe, had written your dad also a thank you.
Well, that was I think it was a condolence to our family upon his death. I think so, or else he was just very sick, and it was anyway. The commander of the Special Forces Europe, SACEUR, SACEUR, was who wrote that. And yeah, my dad traveled to London. He traveled to Germany. He was over to Europe a few times, and at high-level conferences.
Mm-hmm.
Now, John, when you were growing up as a kid, did your dad ever communicate, even just sort of casually, the extent to which he was a world historical actor on this stage, or was it just like everyday life to him?
Well, thanks for asking. I do have one little anecdote. He wasn't able to talk about his work, and we were told that he can't talk about it, but I wanted to know some stuff. And one day, I guess I was in about maybe 9th or 10th grade, and I had heard something about the Strategic Air Command, and it was SAC. And so I said, "Dad, SAC, that's the Strategic Air Command, and you're at SACSA, SACSA. Are you working, for SAC or the Strategic Air Command or something like that?" And he said, "Well, no, actually, they work for us. Our job is to plan things to avoid their ever having to take action. And so it's only if our work fails that they would be called into action. So in a sense, they work for us."
Yeah, it reminds me of two generals arguing about warfare, and 99% of the argument is logistics and movement of material and supply lines, whereas other folks argue, battle tactics. So I think we're at the end of our hour at 9 o'clock. Maybe play us. I was just going to say, play us out with a song. Do you think?
Please.
I put the guitar down. I think I'll
start you out
for another time.
When Irish eyes are smiling. See, if I butcher it, then he'll get the guitar. The world
George.
seems bright and gray. When Irish eyes
Oh,
are
Lord.
smiling.
Jeez, we got another day to get through this week.
Okay.
It's only Thursday.
All right. I won't try to go.
No,
you
that
into
was
singing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. You know, that put a tear in my eye.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it, everyone. Another trio. Thanks for joining us, and make sure you join Dr. Hamamoto on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3:00 Pacific time, 6:00 Eastern Standard Time. Is that right, Doctor?
That's correct.
Daylight time.
Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you. And the name of the show is not just Dr. Hamamoto, correct?
It's just Professor Hamamoto. Yes.
Professor Hamamoto. And then, of
Right.
course, join John at 11 and 8. And he always has something great.
Tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock, we'll be reading another chapter from How the Nation Was Won by Graham Lowry. And we'll learn a little more about Alexander Spotswood.
Oh, here we go. I knew there was a Spotswood, Virginia. Now I know who it is. And then you have your LaRouche folks tomorrow night.
Tomorrow
Sure.
night, Richard Freeman
Yeah.
will be joining me for the first time. And he is the LaRouche expert on the Great Reset economic aspects. And from what I've read of what he says, it's a horror story. We do not want this Great Reset.
And our great contributors out there, keep the good stuff coming. I saw all the stuff about Klaus Schwab and his family being involved in nuclear intrigues and stealing uranium and everything. I had no idea that the Schwab family had all that intrigue. So join John tomorrow at 11, Dr. Hamamoto and myself. I'll be here 12 o'clock tomorrow for another. And then this weekend, Andy, book readings. We're going to be doing book readings on Saturday and another book reading on Sunday at the noon hour. Thanks, everyone.
Great to have you guys here. Thanks, Professor Hamamoto, George, Andy,
Thank you, sir.
else. McDuff lives, and we are proving it every day right here.
Patreon for John, Patreon for Dr. Hamamoto.